Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video I'm going to be showing you how I went about painting this little cute barn owl on this wood slice right here. As you can see, I've gone ahead and done the background, just really easily painted some green and splashed some white over it. And now I'm going in with a big brush and I am just blushing in my values, the darkest areas on the owl. And I sort of used a reference for this owl painting, but I didn't really follow it very closely. I kind of had my own ideas of where I wanted the light to be. So I'm going in with a very dark brown, it almost looks black, and then I'm switching to that brown color on its own, and then finally mixing that sort of blackish and brownish color together and mixing that with a bit of white to form this grey tone that I'm using in all of the lighter areas. And I'm all using this with a flat angle brush, just a big brush to get the rough areas in and filled. Now I'm switching over to a rake brush and I'm going with a whiter version of that grey tone. Not completely white, we're saving the highlights till the end, and I'm starting to put in the rough details and textures where I want the feathers or the fluff to go. So I'm just filling in all those areas on the face, making sure it's facing in the right direction. Again, not being too worried if it looks a little rough and kind of ugly looking. Whenever you're painting, you're going to get several ugly layers of paint before you actually get anything that looks decent. Now I'm switching to a yellow ochre that's been muddied down a little bit with that greyish tone, and I'm just filling in the areas that a lot of barn owls have with this colour, usually on top of the head and a few patches throughout the wings. And I'm going to basically be switching back and forth between my colours here, my lights and my darks, and just kind of adding the texture where I want it to be. Also going in with some burnt sienna. And then switching back to that yellow ochre. This time there's a bit more of that yellow ochre pigment in there. And then switching back to my rake brush to add in some more fluffy areas. A lot of barn owls have this speckled grey area on them, especially on their heads and the tops of their wings. So I'm going in with my rake brush and just dotting on some dark grey, then lightening that with some light grey, and then eventually I'll go in with some black and white to really make them stand out. So this next little stage, I'm actually switching over to my glazing. I'm using that big flat brush again and some glazing medium, and I'm starting to glaze over some dark brown or some burnt umber, and I'm also going to use some purple as well. Purple is a really good color to use for your shadows. It adds a bit more depth and a bit more warmth and vibrance to your paintings. And you can really see it really warms up the owl, makes him look almost ethereal, like he's got a glow to him. I'm just filling it in my beak now, again working from the base of the beak with that yellow ochre and then blending it out with a fine detail brush and just kind of going back and forth between light and dark until I'm happy with it. And then going in with a slightly brighter grey tone with the rake brush again and starting to fill in more of the fluffy highlighted areas on top of my glazing layer. And you may notice that I am using my finger occasionally to soften out some of the rough edges because it does get a little bit rough with the brush. Working on a smaller surface, on a smaller image can be a little tricky sometimes when you're using brushes that are better suited to more wider images. So just keep that in mind when you are painting. You can see I'm going back in with that black again, adding to those speckled areas on the owl. And then doing the same with some bright white. Adding a few little specks here and there around the owl. And here I'm just kind of detailing a few things. I'm going back in with my glazes, I'm smoothing out some of the areas on the face and other parts of the feathers. You want to have a nice balance between texture and smoothness. That way you get a bit more of a realistic look to your animals. Again, I'm trying to make sure I keep those clumps of feathers or down fluff, whatever it's called on birds, really showing. Also adding some highlights to the beak, and now filling in the eyes. I'm actually filling it in with very, very dark brown, not complete black, and then I'm going over that with a bit more of a burnt umber brown, so it's difficult to see on top of that other colour. And then I'm also lining the eyes with a dark grey, and then going in, gradually working lighter and lighter until I get to my whitest highlights. And towards the very end of the actual painting, I did actually go over and glaze a few areas again, just because I wasn't too happy with the way the shadows and the values were sitting on certain areas of him. So I did do that after the fact. But pretty much he is done, and you'll see me adding a few stars here and there to the background, which I did also darken down off camera. But your owl's done. I added some little wispy areas here and there, especially around the beak, just to complete him. And that's pretty much how I painted this little barn owl on this wood slice. And now I'm going to go varnish it, and it will be completely done, ready to hang on the wall. So thank you so much for joining me for this little tutorial here. If you want to see a longer version, you can head over to my Patreon page, where I offer a lot more exclusive content, and also I have my shops in the description below. And I will see you all next time, guys.